Hi there, Rowan Gillson here. I'm the director of IPS, and I'm your host for PhotoEx Italy, our trip to Italy this summer. And I'm excited today to just share with you a little bit more about the trip, and then hopefully to be able to answer any questions that you might have. I'm having a little trouble with the Q&A feature here in Google Hangouts, but if you've got a chat feature there, feel free to chat me any questions that you might have that you'd love to see answered about the trip. Or you can email me as well, info@ipsphoto.co, and I'll check that email before the end of the session here. Yeah, well, I'm super excited about this trip. This will be the second PhotoEx that IPS has held in Italy. We do a trip to Europe once a year in the summer and try to vary up our locations to different things that are super cool and exciting. And I'm really excited to go back to Italy. We were there in 2011, and I'm looking forward to our 2015 trip to revisit some of the epic sites that we saw and to explore some new things and stuff as well. And so on that note, I just want to kind of go through what our trip itinerary will be and give you a preview of some of those sites and things like that. So let me share some of the photos that I took during our last trip. All right, so you're hopefully now seeing my screen. That's what it tells me is happening here. This is one of our kind of epic sites of the city of Manarola, and we'll get to that just a little bit later on in our presentation here. But our trip will start in the city of Rome, and soon after you fly into Rome, we'll drop your stuff off at our lodging place for the night, and then we'll head off to the Pantheon. The Pantheon is one of my favorite sites in Italy, just because it's so old. It was restored over 2,000 years ago, which means that it was built significantly before that, and it's been a place of worship for the whole time that it has existed. It's currently a Catholic church, and it's just an epic building. So we'll go to the Pantheon. Just outside the Pantheon are some fantastic places for gelato and cappuccino and coffee, and it has one of the best piazzas in Rome, just for hanging out and viewing things. The Pantheon is famous for its concrete dome. So this dome has stood obviously for over 2,000 years. It has an open oculus in the middle of it, and so when it rains or snows or whatever, that just comes right through that. There's no window, there's no glass in that. But this was constructed again over 2,000 years ago. We're not really sure how it happened, but it's the oldest and biggest concrete dome of its kind anywhere in the world. And that's really the first thing that you get to see when you get to Italy. Inside the Pantheon, you'll find all sorts of works of art that have been preserved and collected by the Catholic Church. One of them, and what you're viewing here, is actually the tomb of the artist Raphael. Now, not the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, right, but the actual artist. And I highlight this not because Raphael is necessarily the most famous or your favorite artist, but because you see things like this everywhere you go in Italy, where you turn the corner and boom, all of a sudden there's a work of art by Caravaggio or Michelangelo or Da Vinci or something, or there's a tomb of someone famous or something. The country is just so old and has so much history built into it that you can't help but experience it as you go. I think Raphael is actually a fantastic artist, and I really appreciate his works. And so it's really cool to be able to go and see this is the place where that man is buried. And you'll also encounter works of his art as you tour the Vatican museums and things like that later on in the trip. But everywhere you go and everything you do in Italy, you're going to encounter just those interesting pockets of information and of heritage and history that you weren't necessarily expecting. Outside the Pantheon, again, there's fantastic piazzas, and really everywhere you go to in the city of Rome and other larger cities, you'll find fantastic street art, which is really cool. It's another expression that we don't get as photographers, but a way of viewing and preserving the culture. And this is really where Italian life happens, is in these piazzas. You'll find little kind of piazza side cafes for lunch or for snacking, where people are hanging out. You'll find art stands, obviously, flower stands, and just other vendor shops and things like that, both for locals and for tourists as well. We'll spend the rest of our first day in the area of the Spanish Steps. This church is actually at the very top of the Spanish Steps. And in this area, you'll find kind of the posh, luxe side of Rome, where you'll find Dolce & Gabbana and Bulgari and all of those Italian and European high fashion brands. So it's a fantastic place for window shopping, a horrible place for actual shopping unless you're extremely wealthy. And we welcome that as well. But for me, it's just window shopping. But it's a super cool district and area of Rome, and that's where we'll grab our dinner that night. The next day in Rome, we will head to the Colosseum, probably the most famous of all of the landmarks in Rome, and definitely something we will experience as well. The Colosseum is known, at least to many, as the site of persecutions for Christians, and they argue back and forth about whether that's historically accurate or not, but it at least represents that in our minds. And so this historic site has a lot of significance for our Christian faith, as the Roman Empire is famous for persecuting Christians and Christianity for a long period of time. And this is where we'll experience that side of Rome's relationship with Christianity. We will tour the inside and outside of it. We will take care of getting those passes, getting you in the door and things like that. And then you're largely free to explore on your own. Kind of each day will follow a similar pattern where we will go to a significant site or area or kind of district of wherever we are in Italy. And then you'll have time to just go explore. We'll set a deadline of several hours in which you can pair off or team up with other photographers and go explore and see the things that you want to see kind of at your own pace. After which time we'll meet up and then move to our next site. And kind of continue that trend as we go. So you're not really stuck with a big group. You don't have to hold on to the rope, with the little knots in it as we, kind of tour you around. And you won't be in one of those tourist groups, where the leader has the little microphone thing and the speaker and the little flag, and you have to follow them around. Right? That's not really our style. Again, we're going to get you to the sites. We're going to get you access into the important places, and then really let you explore on your own to find the things that are interesting to you. This trip is an awesome chance just to hang out with friends, to meet new people, to come with a friend, but really to explore with other people that are kind of going to go at your same pace. And again, by breaking up into smaller groups, you really have the ability to connect with people that are going to move at the same pace that you do. But again, we're generally photographers, and there's no kind of requirement for your level of experience or anything like that. But we do love photography and we love Jesus, and that's kind of what brings us together as a team. And then we're going to go explore and see cool sites and photograph them while we do that. On that note, there are no classes. You are welcome to hang out with me all the time or anytime you want to, and I will teach you anything and everything you want to know. You can copy my camera settings. You can set your tripod where I set my tripod. We can share information and things like that. But we won't actually be sitting in a classroom. You didn't go all the way to Italy to park yourself indoors. We went to Italy to explore and to see amazing things and to photograph them while we're there and exploring and experiencing that. The photos you've been seeing in this one here are of the Roman Forum, which is another just of my favorite places in all of Italy because of the history that's here. In this photo itself, you're seeing a cross-section of perhaps 2,000 years of history between the different buildings and remnants of monuments that are left. You get to walk on the stones that were there as Julius Caesar ruled Rome, and you get to climb up staircases that were built for emperors, and you get to walk through kind of the hallowed halls, as it were, of really the foundations of Western government. Obviously, we can trace things back to Greece as well, but a large part of our current government itself rests on a heritage that was established and built in Rome. And it's just amazing to be at the center point of that and to see that. Here you see the remnants of the Temple of Saturn, which is one of the oldest surviving buildings there in the Forum, dating back several thousand years. And it's just incredible to experience and to see that and to get to walk kind of among those hollowed stones of democracy, as it were. We'll head back to the Colosseum at night, giving you a chance to take some sweet night shots. This is where it is super helpful to have that tripod. It's not something that's required, but we definitely recommend it. And yeah, I'll definitely help you get some of those cool shots with that more tricky lighting and things like that as well. Pizza. It's one of the most fantastic reasons to come to Rome. And this is me in a little pizza shop. We'll have pizza multiple times on the trip, guaranteed, and you can have it every day for lunch if you want. But the way that we do the meals in Italy is that we'll typically have breakfast at our hostel, wherever we're staying that day. And then as we're out and about during the day, you will be on your own for lunch. This is because of our exploration style, how you get to go where you want to, see what you want to. We're not going to try and meet back up for lunch because that's going to cut multiple hours out of your day as we try to establish those meeting points, get a restaurant, things like that. So really, you're on your own own for lunch, and you can do whatever you want. You can go big, you can go small, you can do whatever. But then we'll meet up for dinner, and dinners are really an epic experience on the IPS PhotoExes. We take great pride in finding amazing restaurants that will cater to a large group, which is somewhat difficult in and of itself. But each night is a really fantastic dining experience. Dining takes between 2 and 3 hours just because of the slower pace of Italian-style eating, as well as being in a big group. But we'll experience multiple courses. We'll have appetizers, we'll have mains, we'll have desserts, and you'll get to really just enjoy fantastic food and fare on the Italy trip. We do not allow alcohol consumption on the trip, just because we kind of pull from a broad base of people that have differing standards there, and so that's something that we do not allow, and we ask participants to not partake in. But you'll find that, again, our meal plan is absolutely incredible. Many students or participants in past trips have actually foregone lunch altogether because they're still not hungry from the dinner before. This is one of the just kind of street side cafes that you'll find everywhere, which are just fun to eat at and to enjoy watching the people and the life going by, and to just sit back and enjoy kind of the slower pace of Italian style eating and feasting. This photo is actually taken inside the top of St. Peter's Basilica, the dome of St. Peter's Basilica. And this is one of the really cool reasons to come with us, is we know about places like this, and we're going to take you there and get you in. This is Judson, who's been one of our team leaders in the past and is likely one of our team leaders for this trip, though he's still trying to work out his own personal travel schedule. But we'll take you in, we'll take you out, we'll take you through to see really what we feel like are the best sites of Italy, and we've gone through and planned that for you. And like I said, I've done this before. I've been on this to these exact places before, and I know how and where to go and where to do that. So this marks the 3rd day of our trip, where we will go to the Vatican, and we'll experience the other side of Rome's relationship with Christianity, where it's now the center point of the Catholic Church and of that enormous body of branch of Christianity. So your first experience with the Vatican and of St. Peter's Basilica will be from the top, where we'll climb up, like I said, inside the dome, and then go all the way up to the inside, where you have fantastic views over the city of Rome. This is my lovely wife, Jocelyn, on top of St. Peter's Basilica, and you can see the city out behind her. So this really is one of the best vantage points of the city. Here you can see the Pantheon off in the distance, and various other unknown domes kind of disappearing off into the haze. But there really aren't the kind of skyscrapers that are typical of American cities. And so this ancient church is really one of the best places to get that overall view. And so we'll come to St. Peter's Basilica, we'll go up to the top, we'll see down inside this amazing church, and then, as you see here, out over the city before heading back to the inside of the church. St. Peter's Basilica is, it's beyond words for me. It is the most impressive building that has ever been constructed by man, I'm persuaded. It was built in the 1600s, and to this day, it is perfect. There's not a flaw, there's not a bend, there's not a tilt to the floor. Everything is square, everything is perfect and amazing. One of the chief architects for this building was a man named Michelangelo, who you're likely familiar with. He wasn't the only one, though, because it took hundreds of years to actually build this. But here you see kind of down the long traverse of the church. It's like most Catholic churches, shaped in a cross. And as you can see, it's simply enormous. The kind of small bronze, I don't know, a little gazebo tent-like thing you see off in the distance there is actually 180 feet tall. And so that gives you a little sense of the scale of how big this church is. The dome ceiling above us is over 300 feet tall, and the dome itself is even higher above that. The church itself will host over 60,000 people at one time, making it one of the top 5 largest churches in all of the world. And you get to experience it. Here's a closer up view, and you can see kind of that, I forget the name of it, but that bronze structure that's over the altar itself, which again is over 180 feet tall, and you can look up into the dome there that was designed by Michelangelo. Beneath that altar and that bronze structure is actually the tomb of the Apostle Peter. And of course, with anything that old, we're never 100% sure of what it is. But it has been verified by historians that the bones of Peter actually are here. And you can't go down and actually see them, but you can peer kind of from this floor level down and see through a window into where those are. which is just another incredible experience connecting back to our Christianity. It's one thing to read our Bible and to believe the things that are there, and it's honestly another experience to walk through a place like this and to see, no, those are the bones of the man who is in the Bible who I'm reading about. It connects it back to our world, to our physical world that we experience on a day-to-day basis, in a way that, again, is just unlike anything else. I have not traveled personally to Israel, but I imagine it's a similar experience to being there, where you're walking on the shores of the Sea of Galilee or something like that. And you get to experience that same level of connection here on your trip to Italy as well. St. Peter's Basilica is filled with fantastic artwork, but this is perhaps the most famous. This is called Pietà, and it is a piece that was done by the 25-year-old Michelangelo. It was really the first of his pieces to garner him a significant amount of fame, and it's absolutely incredible to view this, and as you're there and as you're looking at the art that he created, to realize that this is solid stone, and yet it looks like a fabric. It looks like the man has actually crafted this out of a soft, subtle material, not a hard stone. And again, that's just one of the wonders of this trip, that you get to experience things like that. Photographers, again, we're photographers. We kind of move at the same pace, and you get to hang out with other cool photographers. It's a great chance for you to hone your skills and to practice and to learn from other people, but also to share the things that you know too. Tiny cars are another kind of unique thing. This is me standing by a little car. And it's one of those things that you actually don't really realize how different it is until you see something like a Mini Cooper drive by. Because over in Italy, in Rome, a Mini Cooper actually looks enormous. And then you think back to here and you're like, whoa, Mini Cooper's tiny. And so all of a sudden you have this perspective of, these are like go-karts here. Just some other shots of Rome. This was taken early one morning. This is one of the participants in the 2011 trip, just on the streets of the city of Rome. From Rome, we will travel by train across the country. We're going to stop very briefly at the city of Pisa for a chance to snap a photo of the outside of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. And then we'll continue our journey by train to a place called Cinque Terre. And this is actually the city of Manarola, which is where we'll stay within that city, or within that area. But Cinque Terre is famous. It's known as Cinque Terre literally means the 5 villages in Italian. And it's a UNESCO protected site. In this area, you will not find many cars, very few, because it's completely off limits for tourists and visitors to bring in motor vehicles. So there's a few of the local residents that will have them, but really it's a place that kind of preserves this ancient heritage. It's actually where pesto and focaccia bread originated, and so we strongly encourage you to partake of those local delicacies as you're here. But as you can see, it's right on the shores of the Mediterranean, and this is kind of the retreat portion of our trip, if you will. After the hustle and bustle of Rome, which is a city of over 13 million people, Cinque Terre is that countryside where you're staying in a village of 600 people, where there's a curfew at night, and they actually lock the doors, and you're not allowed to leave. And you get to watch the ancient fishermen pull their boats out to the sea every day to go out to fish for their daily living and bring that back. So for seafood lovers, this is the place where for dinner you will have some of the freshest and best seafood you have ever imagined. And if you're not a seafood lover, there's other things on the menu as well. But the Mediterranean Sea is definitely one of the highlights of this portion of the trip. It's something you've probably read about, you've even studied in school, and now you get to see it and you get to experience it. The Mediterranean Sea it's awesome. It's a wonderful place to take a dip in for the afternoon if you want to. But one of the reasons that this area is famous is for, as you can see on the hillsides here, the vineyards that have been crafted. And so it's much like some of the areas of Indonesia and of China, where you see just kind of these terraced hillsides. Here you have vineyards that are hundreds of years old, that have been literally carved out of the sides of these hills by generations of farmers and of vineyard owners. And so really there's two opportunities for you in Cinque Terre. One is the sea, and it's just to hang out on a beach and to enjoy the water and to enjoy the sunshine and hang out there. And the other is to go on the hiking trails that go between these villages. Like I said, Cinque Terre means 5 lands or 5 cities. And so there are 5 cities along the coast, and you'll have a train pass to get between them. But then there's also hiking trails that go through these ancient vineyards on the cliffs above the sea, giving you just amazing views of these cities, and just a great chance to get outside, away, kind of in the countryside. Here in this photo, you can kind of see we're at one of the villages, obviously, and you can kind of see two more back in the distance as you look through that photo. Again, this is Judson kind of on one of the walking paths between the villages here. From Cinque Terre, we'll head back to the big city, this time the city of Venice. And Venice is, it's a little bit like Disneyland, where it just doesn't quite feel real. And that's okay, because it's just unlike anything you've ever seen or experienced before. I'm going to come back to this photo. But in Venice, you will get to experience the canals and the bridges and, again, all of those things that you have read about. They're true. Here you see a photo of the Grand Canal, and you've got some tourists and gondolas along it. You see the citizens of the city commuting by boat, and the palaces that just line this Grand Canal. Over centuries, these were built up as kind of the center, the main street of the city, where the leading families would kind of compete back and forth with each other for who could build the best palace and who's could demonstrate the most wealth. So we'll take our tours up and down the Grand Canal. You'll have boat passes. They don't have buses, they have boats in Venice, and you'll have the chance to explore that. This is the Rialto Bridge, the oldest and most famous of the bridges that cross the Grand Canal, and it's literally lined with shops on the bridge. Venice is built on 127 islands, and real estate is pretty rare and pretty expensive. And so even the bridges literally have shopping on them. Venice was a commercial powerhouse back in the day, and it still is a place that's really pulling in commerce. It's designed for tourism and tourists, and so you'll find Venice to be a little bit expensive, and you'll also find Venice to be a little bit smelly, but if you know it, you can kind of be okay with that. But just as you'd imagine, it's a city on water, and in the summer, that water kind of tends to stink a little bit, so it's okay. Venice is famous in terms of its tourist-y stuff and items for these masks, this kind of masquerade mask, and also for its glass works. You'll find just fantastic glass shops throughout the city with some really inexpensive and fantastic glass options for souvenirs for you. Another shot of Venice with one of the churches in the background, and yet another shot of Venice here with the canal there. The day that we arrive in Venice, we'll pretty much just be going to our hostel and spend a little bit of time exploring, and then kind of go out at night. And we stay in hostels on this trip for a couple of reasons. But the biggest one is that they really allow us to stay in places that would otherwise be too expensive for a group and a tour like ours. In major cities, you'll find that the downtown areas that are kind of close in to everything where you want to be are typically reserved for super high-end hotels, 4- and 5-star hotels that charge enormous rates. And the cheaper hotels that might be more like what we would stay in tend to be far out in the city. In Europe, we have another option, though, because they have these things called hostels. And so a hostel allows kind of group accommodation where you stay 4, 6, 8 to a room, but they're in those same locations that, again, are typically reserved for the very, very wealthy travelers instead. So what we do is we book out whole rooms. So you will be staying with 4 or 6 or 8 people in a room, but it will only be other participants of this trip of the same gender. And so in that way, we're able to maintain security because you've got cameras and computers and things like that. And obviously, we don't want anyone to steal or have access to those. But you also are only rooming with people that you know and are friends with. And so in that way, we're able to keep our costs much lower, but we're also able to stay in the areas of the city that we really want to and have direct access to some of the highlights of the city. Which brings us to this highlight. So here you see some people from our trip in 2011 enjoying cappuccino at St. Mark's Square. Now, St. Mark's Square is a fantastic place. In the background of this photo, you see St. Mark's Basilica, which is another absolutely incredible church. Very different from St. Peter's Basilica, and something that you'll enjoy comparing the difference between St. Peter's Basilica with the soaring ceilings and light everywhere. St. Mark's Basilica is known as the Church of Gold because on the inside it is literally overlaid with gold inside. But it has a very dark interior and more cave-like and a lot more Eastern kind of influences than you saw in Rome. But anyway, that's in the background here. And then you have this giant square that's really the center of Venice, and just a glorious place. You have a clock tower on one side and open to the Grand Canal on another with the gondolas lining up. But in this square, you'll find these cafes. And I remember the first time I went to Venice, I saw these cafes, and that's where I wanted to sit. I wanted to sit there and watch people and just enjoy a cup of coffee here. And we went to the restaurant there and discovered that to order a coffee to go was like €1, but to sit down, a cappuccino is like €20. We didn't on that particular trip because we were budget items, but that was a super high priority for me to budget in, to give you the experience of sitting in the middle of Venice and enjoying a breakfast, a cappuccino and a croissant, Italian style, and just to enjoy what Napoleon called the sitting room of Europe, of just participating in just the hustle and bustle of the city around you, sitting and watching the facade of St. Mark's Basilica and the other just glorious buildings that surround the square. And that's all on us and included as part of the trip, and sure to be one of your highlights as well. From Venice, we will move on. Here's another shot of the Grand Canal and a gondola. And then night shoots in Venice as well are absolutely fantastic because there's plenty of water to reflect things back up. So you'll get some fantastic colors, some fantastic lighting options as well. From Venice, we will move on again by train to our final destination of the trip, which is the city of Florence. Florence is famous because it's the capital of Tuscany, and Tuscany is kind of typically where our Italian food here in the States comes from. Everything is about Tuscan restaurants in Tuscany, and Florence will not disappoint. This is the El Duomo, the basilica or the church in Florence, and this is viewed kind of from Michelangelo's Plaza. Michelangelo was actually a native of Florence, and did some of his best work in the city. But Florence is known as the sparking point of the Renaissance, and that's really something that you'll experience here as well. And really a lot of that goes back to this structure that you see here. This church was built, and at the time, the dome was the largest structure of its kind anyone had ever seen in the world. And no one really knew how this engineer was doing it, was pulling it off. And so for a long time, other artists would come to the city to experience this, to see it, and to bask in its glory. And it's said that people even said, well, if they can build that, I can do this, as they went on to push the boundaries of their own artistic expression, and again, continued to push forward the Renaissance. Florence was an extremely wealthy city, and back in the day, fought its wars with Pisa and with Genoa and with Rome and with the other kind of warring city-states of Europe, but was very successful. And again, that wealth led to the artistic expression that really filled the city. In Florence, we will get to climb up the tower that you saw here. Here on the left, that large white tower is where this photo is taken from, to get an up close and personal view of the dome, the place that inspired, again, the Renaissance, which gives you fantastic views out over the rest of the city as well. Another of the sites that's super significant in Florence, you can see in the background there, behind that big white tower, is a red dome behind it, which is St. John's Baptistry. This is where really all of the leading citizens of Florence were baptized for hundreds of years. This is where Dante, the poet Dante, was baptized. He also was a native of Florence. He's known as Italy's greatest writer by far. He's the Shakespeare of the Italian language. And you'll see remnants of his influence on the city. But he really contributed massively to Christian literature, especially back in his day, at a level that no one else ever did. You have the Inferno, and you have other works by Dante, and it's believed that he was largely influenced by that building itself, St. John's Baptistry. Inside are fantastic works of art, and particularly graphic scenes of hell, which many believe led to Dante's Inferno and some of his descriptive language associated with that. And so again, you'll get to walk the streets that he walked and see the things that he saw as his inspiration. Florence is our final stop, and so it's a great place to pick up souvenirs on this trip. And as past experience has led, Florence is filled with amazing leather markets where you won't necessarily find Dolce & Gabbana brands that you're familiar with, but you'll find amazing quality Italian leather at super low prices comparatively. And so it's a great place to pick up those final souvenirs and to hit the leather markets and to explore and kind of fulfill those shopping needs that you have. All right, so that's really the end of my my itinerary here, and I want to just give the opportunity, if there are any questions that somebody might have, to share those. And so again, you can use the chat feature here, and for whatever reason the Q&A feature isn't working. But I will also pull up my email real quick and see if anybody has submitted questions over email. All right, I'm not seeing anything that has come in. But I want to just thank you for coming, for participating in this this chat. I can't actually see who's here, so I would love it if you drop me a note and say, hey, I was there at your hangout today, and I'm thinking about the Italy trip. And again, if you do have questions, just stick those in that email, and I'd be happy to answer those. But hopefully this this discussion has kind of answered some of those questions and really given you some inspiration for the trip. It's something that I'm super excited about and would love to include you in as well this summer. And as promised, we have a promo code for you, so that will save you an extra $50 on your registration for the trip. And do remember too that our early registration discount ends January 31st. And so you definitely want to register before that deadline so that you can save $500 on the trip. But your discount code for the trip is Italy, ITALY, 2015 2015 RDG. Those are my initials, RDG. So again, that's Italy, ITALY, 2015 RDG. And that's all lowercase. And so you can just enter that code as you're registering for the trip, and I will look forward to seeing you there. All right, thanks so much for your time. I hope you have a great evening, and I hope to see you in Italy.